Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Woolly Wonka Fibers podcast. My name is Anne, and this is a podcast about my knitting, my spinning, my indie dye and design business, as well as some reading this week. I hope everybody's doing great. 2018 has been a very bumpy year to this point. I'm really not interested in it continuing in this fashion. It's just been yeah, bumpy the last 2 weeks. Um, Nothing that's a crisis, I guess. I'm fine. Um, my husband, maybe not a total surprise since he's in a different germ pool and he's been doing a lot of traveling. He's 2,400 miles away from me, and even though he got the flu shot this year, he has come down with the flu with a pneumonia on top of that. So kind of frustrating when he's so far away and he's just kind of having to limp along and manage, and that makes it tough. And then I had to take our oldest dog up to the vet this past week, Monday, and have her put to sleep. She hadn't been doing great, and we kind of knew she was on limited time, but she was my husband's kind of best buddy, best partner, so doubly hard to do that when he's not here and he's feeling horrible. Just be like, okay, we've tried what we can try. She had started having some seizures, actually had a decent sized seizure on Christmas Eve, and the vet we'd had her on some anti-anxiety meds because she'd been having small seizures, which when she would come out of them, she would be very anxious. And we tried her on some seizure medication, and I think it probably helped a little bit, but it wasn't helping that it was preventing them completely. And she was up, multiple times at night with just not doing well. We'll leave it at that. Anyway, I am glad to see the first 18 days of this year go away. I hope that we're just getting all of the crap out of the way at the front end, and now everything will be much more positive as we roll through the rest of the year, or at least that's the theory, and I'm going to stick to it. Okay, enough of the sort of life update, moving on thing. Let's talk about a few things. Getting ready for Stitches West. I will be vending there again this year in booth 120. If you are planning on stopping by and saying hi, please do. I would love to have some actual live interaction time with some folks, so please make sure to introduce yourself. Excuse me. If you come through the booth. So I'm in the midst of doing a lot of dyeing for that and just getting ramped up for it. This year I am not driving to and from California. I'm actually going to fly, and so we'll be shipping product, which means that I have about a week less of dye time since it's got to go in the box, go to UPS, go to the conference center, as opposed to me last minute shoving semi-damp skeins into my car and driving 2 days. I just didn't feel like I could really budget the time away this year. Since I'm here by myself, just to have the dog sitter, house sitter, and all of that, it's an extra almost 4 full days. And she does a great job, and I'm so happy we have her, and she's here, and I don't worry about stuff, but it's also not the same as me being home. And I have a lot of dyeing to do for Yarn Fest, which will be coming up the first weekend in April, which is in Loveland, Colorado. So lots going on the dye front. But I have actually gotten some knitting done. So I thought I would share that first with you. I have finished my Bolt shawl. The pattern is by Vera Valimaki. It was originally a Brooklyn tweed design using their fingering weight yarn, but fingering weight is fingering weight. So I translated it into my Ayrton sock, which is the merino cashmere superwash merino cashmere nylon sock blend in 2 colorways: soot, which is a dark charcoal, and chimney sweep, which is a lighter gray with gray and black speckles on it. And here is the shawl. Let me see if I can get most of it in there. It's kind of an interesting construction. You work this panel first. That's just kind of normal sized, even stripes, garter stitch stripes. And then you pick up along this edge, and then you work the rest of the shawl out using short rows to shape that section. And then you work just regular, regularly spaced stripes while decreasing all the way down to this little pointy tip. Boop. So I think that this is kind of more of a large scarf rather than a shawl. It's not super big. Let me drop this down. Hang on one second. So you can see it does not hang down super far. And it has this kind of long end that wraps. So I think it is kind of better served as a fill in the neckline piece, like that. But it was a super fun knit. It was a quick knit. You need about 275 yards of each colorway, so you could knit this from scrap. If you had kind of half skeins of some fingering weight yarn, you can get by. I used 60 grams of the lighter gray and 50 grams of the dark gray, and those are both 100-gram skeins. So this was my January Wonka Palooza project for the prompt gray. Yeah, and a really fun knit, so I'm glad that I did that. I'll talk a little bit more about another gray project when we get to the spinning section. I'm currently working on, since Bolt is off the needles, I'm currently working on a project for the next Knit Filament magazine that will be for the spring summer issue. So that's kind of my focus piece right now, and probably will be for the next 10 days or so. I want to make some good progress on that. But then I also decided that it would be kind of fun to do a project that would bridge the gap between January's prompt of gray and February's prompt of pink. You guys will recognize this project once I show you the picture. I had talked about starting this last year and didn't get around to it, but it is the Lillian Still Hat by Erica Huser. It's a 2-color fingering weight colorwork hat. And the 2 colors that I want to knit it in are from Tail and Tendril. This pink is not showing as pink as it is in real life. Still not as pink. This makes it look kind of almost like a very pale dusty rose, but it's a darker pink. So I've got this kind of mid-range gray and the coordinating pink to go with it. So I thought I would cast that one on, and that would be kind of like my fun project that'll get me through the end of January and into February for the Wonka Palooza. The yarn is Tail and Tendrils Maple. They have an Etsy store. This is their 75% merino, 25% nylon sock yarn base, and the colorway is Dawn on the Mountain. It's a paired color that came with half a skein of each of those. So that will be my next personal project. So that is what I am currently working on in knitting. So let's move on to some spinning. I Did not have this to bring to show you guys last time. Oh, I have one more knit thing buried here on my desk. This I've had finished for a while. It was actually a finish in 2017, but I did not bring it to show you guys. This is my Arbols cowl. I knit this from 2 skeins of fingering weight hand spun. The original hand spun was a bat that was made to be inspired by the bald eagles. So it had the dark brown, super fine merino, and these little kind of mid-range blue-gray flecks of silk noil. And then the white was blended in, which is a alpaca. And I didn't want to spin this up into, like, to blend all of that together. So I actually pulled off the natural colored alpaca, and then I spun the superfine merino and the noil together to make this kind of heathery yarn, and then I spun the alpaca separately. They're both 2-ply fingering weights. Now I made some pretty major adjustments to this cowl. I did not want it to be sort of a loop and a half. The original cast on number wasn't quite enough to loop completely. It was more of a hangsy downsy cowl. And I like mine a little snugger, so I altered the cast on numbers to about, it came out to about 21¼ inches circumference, which is what I generally like for, you know, a cowl that's going to fit like that. And then I knit the cowl with the different stitch count, incorporating the slip stitch pattern in. I think it's a very effective pattern. I like the fact that it goes from light to dark. It was the perfect use of this hand spun, of which I did not have a ton. I had, I think it was 2.9 ounces total of the 2 skeins. So it wasn't going to be enough to do a huge project with. And it worked out okay on the cowl. The grist for the alpaca yarn was a little bit lighter than the Tweedy yarn. But I didn't wind up switching needles for the top and bottom sections. I used the same size needle, and it came out just fine when it blocked. Super warm and snuggly. You can see in the with the alpaca there's a little bit of a halo, which I love. It's super soft. So yeah, so this is the Arboles cowl. I will link to that pattern below on Ravelry. So that is it for knitting. Let's talk about spinning. I had this one spun up in, I finished it actually on the 1st, but I'm considering it a 2017 spin because the bulk of the spinning was done in 2017. This is 2 ounces of a superfine merino cashmere blend. The colorway is Peppy. It is from Ocean Wind Knits, from a fiber club from, I think, 5 years ago. I spun this into a 2-ply fingering weight yarn. So I have enough here for, I think there's like 220 yards in this little skein. So I have enough here to do a pair of fingerless mitts, which is what I will probably do with that. Just a pretty kind of mossy green and blue combo. Crazy soft, as you might guess. This originally in the club came with another bright colorway, like a orangey red, to be spun kind of for color work or contrast or whatever, and I've already spun that and used it several years ago. So this little guy is, you know, the lone wolf. So I'm glad I got that one spun up. Next up, out of my stash, this is also an Ocean Wind Knits fiber. This is from the 2017 Fiber Club. I spun this one up for the Wonka Palooza since it's a gray prompt. I think that qualifies. The colorway is Lake Louise, which is named after a lake that's in Alberta. This is part of Lori's O Canada sets. She did that all last year. So here is the inspiration photo. And I spun this up into a 2-ply. It came to a DK weight. I was shooting for sport, so close. It poofed up a lot. It is a superwash merino, about 230 yards and 4 ounces. So very happy with that. I think that will make a nice neutral basic accessory. Very guy friendly colors, so I'm happy with that. So what I'm tackling now currently is kind of going along with that same concept of some in January, some in February. So they are upstairs on my wheel, so I don't have them to show you, but Two of by Hand several years ago did a whole series of what they called potion packs, and they were 1 ounce increments of various different colorways that they carried in their shop. And so you got 4 colorways that all they could, I guess, be sort of gradient-y in the sense that each one of them, as you kind of stack them in progression, has a little bit of color from the previous one. So for instance, the first one I'm spinning has just pale blue, pale gray, and then medium blue and medium gray. The next one that I'm spinning has some of the medium blue gray, and then it's got brown and kind of a salmon color in it. And then the next one that I'm spinning has the salmon color, that kind of bright orangey pink, and true pink, and some brighter blues. And then the final one in the set has turquoise, light blue, and bright blue, plus a darker purple. So my thought to do those, because I thought it would be kind of fun and it would feel like I'm getting a lot done, even though I'm really not spinning that much right now, is to do 1 ounce, to do each one of those 4 1 ounce increments as a 2-ply fingering weight. And I have this pack plus 2 other packs, and I thought, well, if I spun all those up, I could do mix and match socks, hats, mittens, whatever, as long as they're spun to the same weight. They should all work out just fine. So that's my goal, is to finish this first one, see if I'm motivated to spin a couple others, or if I want to go back to a full 4 ounces of something. But right now then, because I've got the grayish colors and then some pink colors in there, my thought is I will have that to kind of keep me over the next 10 days, get me through the end of the month, and be able to transition from the gray prompt in the Wonkapalooza to the pink prompt in the Wonkapalooza. Wonkapalooza thread is open for February. I will link to the group below. Check that out if you're interested in the coupon code for either patterns or yarns. It is in that forum post on Ravelry. So that's what I'm working on in spinning. One other thing that I just kind of want to mention before I go on to books. A lot of you know, or at least if you kind of follow my Ravelry group, you know that I'm taking a little bit of a break, not 100% break, but a mini break from doing some design work this year. Last year was really a busy year for me, and I felt like I needed to just take a step back and regroup a little, think about some things that I've had percolating for a while but haven't kind of really solidified in my mind how I want to focus on them, how I want to present them, how I want the designs to look. So I'm taking a little bit of time to do that. And one of the things that I'm doing this year is taking an online class that's sort of a seasonal journaling class. It's some meditative thoughts, some prompts, some things about the year. And I had never really I keep a day journal where I have a lot of lists and I have notes to self or notes of things that have occurred, but I've never really done like an art journal. So this has been kind of fun to be able to pull some things together and sort of see what images are inspiring and do some things with the prompts. So I've been doing a bunch of just some basic sketchy things and some quotes that appeal to me, just some things that I thought were pretty, colors I liked, color palettes I liked. One of our prompts was for to put together a mosaic of things that are for sort of self-care moments, and can see some of mine there. Obviously there's a lot of knitting in here, but kitty snorgels and tea. So it's been kind of fun pulling some of the photos and things together, and so I thought I would share this page, which is kind of the January index pages, I guess. The prompt was to think about what colors or what images speak to you about January. And I found some really wonderful artwork that I've incorporated in. So yeah, I'm just hoping that there will be lots of little things like this that will kind of rejuvenate some of the ideas that I've had percolating a while and haven't decided how I want to approach them. I mean, I could completely see this being a color palette, and the fact that these two pictures were completely unrelated on the internet, they're not even by the same artist, but I think it's pretty cool how the colors fade into, from this into the rider into the stag. I could totally see a gradient colorway out of that progression. So anyway, just been working on that. That's been kind of like a nice little mental break from other things for me. I've just really been enjoying doing some things that are, you know, fun and interesting to my brain and creative, but not creative on a deadline. That's been very good for me. So, sidebar there, let's move on to reading. I have two books to talk about this week. The first book is called Breath of Earth. One of the list prompts for the Around the World in 52 Books this year is 4 books that are linked by the 4 elements. So, meaning that you'll have a book that has Earth in the title, in the author, in the subject matter, one on air, one on fire, one on water. So Breath of Earth. This was a alternative history, steampunk, and magic book combined. It's set in 1906 in San Francisco. The author has done a really fun job of tying in his actual historical things like the earthquake in San Francisco with this Brave New World that she's created. In this particular instance, California has more ties to the Pacific Rim. It's part of the Union Pacific Alliance, so tied to China and Japan and the Far East. Still some things that you would recognize about early 20th century California / San Francisco. San Francisco is still a major port. There's lots and lots of cultural melting pot happening there. Our heroine is somebody who is of mixed ancestry. She's maybe Swedish, Japanese, Spanish. She's got a whole lot of stuff going on. And she works as the secretary for the local group of geomancers who are all men, who are all sort of middle-aged men, although they do have an apprentice program, and they control the earth power that gets continually released by these smaller earthquakes. And so San Francisco has been very stable since the geomancers have been living there, because the Geomancer Guild, if you will, siphons the power out of these earthquake tremors from under the earth and dissipates it. And the way that they do that is they push the power into crystals and stones that then are used as basically fuel cells for a whole bunch of steampunk machinery with zeppelins and auto cars and all kinds of things. Very creative use of some pieces of history to bring them into this imaginative, magical filled world that the author has created. This is the first in a series. So a lot of the book is getting to know our heroine and her figuring out who she is and her powers and how they relate to other things that are going on in the world. Teddy Roosevelt features in this one, although he's not president. He's basically an ambassador in this one. There's a lot of girl empowerment in this, but it's really nicely done because the author's been able to place that within the context of all of the different ethnic groups and that sort of caste system, as well as that she's a woman in a very male-driven world. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was a lot of fun. I loved how the author finished it up. I thought it was a great adventure story. I liked the heroine. She's frustrated by all the things I think that frustrate most women, even today, but certainly early 20th century. And, you know, she's a very like roll up her sleeves and just get to it kind of girl, which I like. So again, that was Breath of Earth. I will give that a 4 out of 5 star recommendation if you like that genre. Because there's some suspension of disbelief. You have to be prepared to take the journey as the author has created it. So if that's not your thing, then this book won't be your thing. But for what it is, well written, fun, good characters, good plot, lots of good things in the book. And I think probably could be young adult. There's not a ton in it that's graphic in any theme. So if you're looking for another good young adult book, this would probably fit the bill. The next book I read was for week 5, which is a book about or inspired by real events on the Around the World in 52 Books prompts. I chose to read a book called In the Belly of the Elephant. I picked this book for basically the reason that it's not the kind of book I would usually pick. The book that I was very interested in reading that was basically a biography, I couldn't get a copy of. It's old enough. I was going to have to like go to used bookstore online kind of things, and it was $35 a copy, and I thought, I don't need to read it that badly. So this book I picked, In the Belly of the Elephant, is the memoir of about a 2-year period of an American woman who is in Africa serving with the Peace Corps / co-working with other aid agencies. The bulk of the book, she is in a small town in a drought-ridden area called Dory. She is from a half Mormon, half Catholic family who are from Idaho. So she's definitely a fish out of water, but she's somebody who's in her late 20s. She's done this for several years. She's very drawn to helping people. She's very drawn to trying to make a difference in the world, and kind of sees the trip and her job there as her calling. Obviously, some of the book is about the things that she sees and does and interacts with in this small town, the people there, what they do when they have kind of an ongoing drought, and then there is a horrific flood that wipes out a large part of the town. You know, the disease, the famine, basic medical care information, all of that stuff, and dealing with the politics of it. She does discuss quite a bit. This is during the early to mid 90s. So she does get a little bit into uh, the politics, not only in Africa, but also in the Middle Eastern world that affect their area. Civil wars, the violence, um, difficulty getting relief aid to them when airports get shut down, that kind of thing. So that was a really interesting part of the book. I really enjoyed that part of her story, and at the near the end of the book, about 3/4 of the way in, she's offered a position to get a small promotion to go work in Somalia. And she goes and visits and comes to the realization that she cannot live in Somalia. It's too violent. It's too all of the things that make her job that much harder. It's hard enough where she is, but this is beyond what she feels like she can manage. Wrapped up into this is kind of this quest for a husband, which was odd. If the point of the story was about her being like an independent woman and doing these things and coming to understand a different culture that was very different from hers, and a growth, a personal growth, the fact that she's like constantly hung up on this guy who dumps her in the first 3 chapters of the book for the entire book is a little jarring. I don't know that that's the story that she really wants to tell, but because it comes up so much, it does wind up being the story that she tells about herself and her life and her progress, Pilgrim's Progress. So I'm going to give this one about a 3.5 stars. Like I said, I thought that the information about her time in Africa as an aid worker, the governmental and political situation that existed, that she was trying to work within, but still make some strides for these local people that she's come to really view as her family, and her struggles resolving her very sheltered and fairly conservative upbringing with kind of the new reality that she lives in. That part gets my vote. The other, like, personal angst about not having a husband, and is it okay to sleep with someone who's not of your ethnic race, and what will her dad think, and that kind of thing. I could have had that part not part of the book and been just happy with it. So 3.5 stars. I will put links to both of those Goodreads pages down below so you guys can check those out if you're so interested. This week the topic is a book originally written in an language other than English, and I have picked a Norwegian murder mystery for that one. So something totally different this week, but I'm looking forward to that, and we'll report back in on that next time I talk to you guys, which will be a couple more weeks, and it will be February already, if you can believe it. So I hope all of you are doing great. I hope your 2018 has kicked off to be a fantastic year for you. I hope that you're kind of getting settled into the normal routine again after all of the excitement and fun of the holidays, and are enjoying some crafting time for yourself. So until next time I talk to you, take care. Happy knitting.